All right, g'day teacher geeks, and maybe especially new teacher geeks. I'm going to boil down 10 years of my teacher training into a short amount of time as possible. Right, step one, figure out what you're going to teach. It makes perfect sense. Walk into a classroom, I got this. Okay, then you go, well, hang on. You got to actually formulate that into an outcome and make it written and explicit. Put it on the board, I guess. Okay, now you got to figure out how you're going to teach that. What activities you're going to do. Has to be engaging, has to be inspiring, right? Has to be interesting. Can't just lecture. Okay. What am I going to teach? How am I going to teach it? I got it. Now you got to figure out how you're going to assess it. Did you actually teach it? You can't just walk in there and teach something and then not figure out did kids learn it or not. All right, okay, there's logic to that. That makes sense. Okay, so what am I going to teach? How am I going to teach it? Now I got to assess it. Yeah, but every kid learns differently and learns at different paces. So you're going to have different outcomes in one lesson to make sure that all kids are being engaged and stimulated and learning something. Right, so more than one learning outcome. Okay, so a range of learning outcomes. Okay, cool. Now, but also you have to assess differently too, right? We've got to have flexible assessments because not all kids are going to show their understanding in the same way, right? This is bollocks, by the way. I don't believe in this, but anyway, okay. Right, multiple outcomes, multiple assessments, multiple activities, multiple resources. Got it. Okay, but let's have a look at your content. Okay, it's not just enough to teach facts. You've got to teach the conceptual understanding, to bigger picture. Get to the why, right? There has to be a reason why kids are learning this stuff. It's not enough just to memorize wrote facts and figures. Okay, but that's not in the textbook. The textbook's just information. Yeah, okay, but the textbook has the content, but you've got to get to the why. You've got to figure out the concepts based on that. Also, by the way, articulate that in your learning plan, your lesson plan. Also, your unit plans. You can also make sure that you're including health and safety. You can also make sure that you're figuring out also not only teaching content and factual information and content-based outcomes, but please also make sure that you're teaching a range of skills. By the way, we're figuring out that kids these days don't really have the interactive social skills and the cooperative skills. So you also have to teach that as well at the same time that you're teaching this historical content coming from the textbook, but also teaching conceptual understandings with having multiple outcomes, multiple activities, multiple resources to engage all kids, and also multiple different assessments that are flexible based on the kids. It's getting ridiculous. And this is why teachers are burning out. So what do we do? Well, what I've done is trying to boil things back to the basics, and I figure out what am I going to teach, how am I going to teach it, and did I teach it? There are things in there that can be embedded with how we teach that will cover all those other things that people want. But the reality is that they take a lot of time. So they are goals to strive for, but the only reason I can get to those bigger, like I teach to bigger conceptual understandings whilst having factual content. I provide a range of resources, audiobooks, textbooks, video lectures. I provide that. I also, I don't do multiple assessments. I don't believe in that. I have very firm deadlines. If you don't know it by this point, we're moving on. I don't change the pace of my classes to match kids. That's silly. That's nonsense. That doesn't work in the real world or in the real world of the classroom. So I don't do that. So I do these things, but the only reason I can do them is because I went part-time teaching. Okay, it takes 4 or 5 hours per lesson plan to figure out how to do all those things. So if you're a new teacher or even an experienced teacher and you're burning out because of all of those demands that I just talked about that have been lumped onto us over my first 10 years of teaching, where it was like, it started out pretty simple. Okay, figure out what you're going to teach, how you're going to teach it, and did you teach it? And then everything else gets piled on top of that. If that's burning you out, a couple of things you can do. One, boil it back to the basics. Okay, and for me personally, it works when I walk into a class confident with what I'm going to teach. And if it's just one outcome, I'm like, this is what I want to teach today, and this is how I'm going to teach it. Even if I don't get to the did I teach it, the assessment part, that's fine. That's okay. I want to walk in there with confidence and go, we're going to teach something cool today. My fundamental goal and mission as a teacher, which I think it should be for all teachers, is teach kids cool stuff that one day they will use, right? And so boil it back to that. Now, if an administrator or any well-meaning, good-intentioned pencil pusher comes in and says, you're not doing X, Y, and Z, we need to have a spine, we need to have a backbone, we need to stand up for ourselves and say, look, this is why I'm not doing that. Okay, you might be disconnected, and they are well-meaning, right? Presume positive intent, that's a pretty good mantra, that possibly are well-meaning, but just explain. Show them reality of your day and say, I don't have time for that. Okay, and I think that's where we can preserve our own sanity. So I can't really talk to everyone else's context from what you're teaching and the demands that are being placed on you. But I know I became very, very happy when I closed my classroom door. I stopped worried about everything else that was going on outside me, and I just figured out I want to focus on my students, and I'm just going to I want to figure out some cool stuff to teach you, and how I'm going to teach it in some interesting ways. And man, I have never loved teaching more, and I never want to quit. And I have this passion and energy, enthusiasm, which is why I started this silly channel called Teacher Geeks, but I want to share. And I also want to tap into and find other teacher geeks who have that same passion that I have. I've been very lucky that I can create materials that other teachers can use, which lightens their load. And I guess hearing the feedback helps improve their quality of life because they don't have to spend those hours and hours of planning, but they can still tweak and improve and develop on the materials that I provide. I want to find other teachers that can do that for every subject, every grade level, so that we can work together, right, as teachers helping each other out. Teachers Pay Teachers is a great platform for that. I think that's made massive advances in how we can ease our workload and become better teachers. But I feel like there are some limitations there. So I'm working on sort of developing a better system for that. Basically, you don't know what you're getting with Teachers Pay Teachers. I hope if we can get a range of people on board with my thematic model of curriculum design, and we share a common philosophy of pedagogy and how to approach teaching, well, then we can create resources that'll be like the McDonald's of teaching, right? Where it doesn't matter what pack you pick up, you know what it's going to contain. Right, I'm rambling on something else completely different here. I'm sorry. The point of it is that we're getting burned out because of all these well-meaning and logical ideas, I guess, that have been put into teaching, but the practical reality is it's very difficult and we simply don't have the time to do it. So first step is stand up and say, look, I don't have the time to do this and here's why. So I'm going to do what I can do for these students in front of me, because trying to do everything is not helping me at all. Second is, in good time, Teacher Geeks and Thematic Education is going to grow, so we can provide whatever I provide for IB psychology teachers across every grade level and every subject. And so I hope I can get people to help me with that. All right. Look, if someone's coming to you and they're giving you too much work to do, just say, look, especially with the differentiating content and individualizing your course and individualizing your content, simply say, I don't individualize my content so I can individualize my care. And that is how I try to provide an equitable classroom. And that because we have very firm, strict, structured course in terms of content and outcomes and assessments, that gives me the energy and the emotional energy and even physical energy to attend to my kids individually while they work through their content. That to me is what great teaching is going to look like in the future when we get rid of all these well-meaning, terrible, abstract ideas. Okay, all right, started with 10 years of teaching in 2 minutes and then it became something else. But anyway, I'm feeling a little bit of motivation to make more of these videos, so I'm going to try to get them all out today. All right.